Hello, all. Welcome to the board Backbencher. Here is a second episode, and I'm your Krishna. I know you're all excitedly waiting for the second episode of it, and I got us a very good guest for this episode. Today, here with me is Mr. Swaroop. I would just introduce him as the kindest person I know. I will ask him to introduce his credentials for you. Hi, Swaroop. Welcome to the show.
Hi Krishna, how are you? Thank you so much for inviting me to this show.
Yeah, I'm great. Swaroop, your audio is a bit low.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes. Yeah, now I can hear you sound.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and quickly share about myself. So I hail from Nellore. It's in Andhra in India, and right now I'm in Singapore. So I have an overall of more than 10, 11 years of work experience. I started my career as an engineer, but I eventually found interest in the space of management and people. So I naturally gravitated towards HR and related topics. So I was working with this company called Infosys back then, but eventually I switched jobs within Infosys and did my MBA at XLRA Jamshedpur. Right now, I'm working with this company called Schneider Electric, and I have more than 7 years of experience in the HR domain itself, working across different aspects of HR, like HR business partnership, talent management, rewards, and HR strategy. So yeah, that's quickly about myself, Krishna.
Wow, that summarizes how skilled you are. Seriously, man. And I have listened a lot about you on LinkedIn. What's the buzz about? I heard that you were even one of the 200 selected content creators in LinkedIn.
Yeah, so that happened last year as a part of LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program that was launched for the first time in India. So just for people to know, if, in case they do not know about LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a professional networking platform, and it's a space where you can also look for jobs, create content, create your personal brand. And in India itself, there are more than 90 million users on LinkedIn.
Oh,
Now, the point is not all 90 million users are very active, which is understandable. So, how I happen to be one of those 200 members is that there was an application for us to fill. I think there were some thousands of people who have applied. Obviously, not 90 million people have applied. So, among those thousands of applications, so LinkedIn editorial team and LinkedIn creator management team went through all the applications and they filtered 200 of them, and I happened to be one of them. And
wow.
I think I was purely lucky for being there.
That's so modest of you. Yeah, cool. So, coming to our topic today, when you said we will be better discussing things on curiosity, that even raised my curiosity levels. So, how do you define curiosity here?
So it's a very simple word. I think everybody understands what does being curious mean, but uh, what I wanted to bring to the discussion here is the topic of how curiosity can help individuals and companies and societies to grow. So essentially, people who are curious really look to find answers for some questions, and the questions could be anything and everything. There's absolutely no limit to what kind of questions curious people really look for answers. Now, why am I talking about uh, growth here? Because essentially, as human beings, everybody is looking to grow in their own career, in their own life, in some form or the other, right?
Right.
So I wanted to just share with you a couple of pyramids to kind of lay the framework that I'm going to use to explain why I chose this topic.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen, and people who are listening on audio, I'll run you through as to what the slide is going to look like.
That's great. Really helpful. So
Yeah,
essentially, the foundation of all growth is curiosity, is it?
yeah, that's what I deeply believe in, because if you're not curious, then there is absolutely no way you can grow. and the intensity and the amount of curiosity can vary from person to person, but everybody who has grown at some point in time definitely have been curious about something or the other. Let me know when you can see the screen, Krishna. Right now it's a blank white space.
Yes, yes, I have your screen. So
Okay, great. So what I want to do right now is to show the what of the framework. So when I say what of the framework, it looks something like this. Now there are four levels that I'm showing on the screen on the pyramid, and the bottommost base of the pyramid is what I call as the curiosity. And on top of curiosity, you have the next level, which is creativity. And on top of creativity, you have the third level, which is innovation. And the fourth level is the non-linear growth. That's how I'm calling this right now. But
wow.
why curiosity important? So there's a particular phrase that I use, and I don't think I am the owner or I'm the originator of that particular phrase, but somehow I don't know who exactly used it in the first time. So the way it goes is, if creativity is about connecting the dots, curiosity is really about collecting the dots.
Collecting thoughts. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the definition of creativity is to come up with something original based on something that you have already experienced. So that's the connecting the dots is all about. But why curiosity is important in this context is that unless and until you have some input, you don't have any output. It's as simple as that. And the input is really about collecting those dots, and dots actually mean different things. Dots could be experiences, dots could be different knowledge bases that you have experience or exposure to. The dots can be different people that you interact with. Dots can be different educational backgrounds that you have had. So unless and until we are curious about several things, we will not be able to collect all of those experiences and all of those exposure and all of those dots, if I can put it that way.
Wow.
Now,
Oh, great. Let me stop you here for a minute.
yeah,
When you said that if there is no input, there won't be any output, that hit me hard, right? People tend to stay in their same lives, doing the same things, and they eventually think that outcome will change someday, right?
yeah,
At one point, I was doing that.
yeah.
That hit me hard now. So yeah, as you said, essentially, if you want to change the output, we need to change or revise our inputs. That's a very great point, and collecting the dots is one such way to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And what Warren Buffett calls that phase of not being actively learning and not being active about life as sleepwalking. So once you move from sleepwalking stage to being intentional about it, you will tend to see quite a lot of things because you tend to be very more observant about everything that's happening in your life. So creativity is really about coming up with original ideas, building on your experiences, and that's why creativity is level two. That's built on the level one of curiosity. And a lot of people think that creativity is similar to innovation, and there is a reason why I've clarified both of them as two different levels, because creativity can mean coming up with original ideas, but it might not always lead to a particular solution, which is where innovation comes into the picture, because innovation is really about addressing a particular problem. And unless and until people are creative, you can't come up with innovative ideas. And those innovative ideas can be directed at solving specific problems. And that's essentially level three is all about. And the topmost level that I'm calling as non-linear growth, and the reason why I also clarify it as a non-linear growth is because organic growth can be achieved, and it might naturally happen as a course of in the course of time. But non-linear growth is really that helps things to leapfrog. And if you take an example of a country like India, which is really leapfrogging on several aspects like digital infrastructure and overall infrastructure as well. So non-linear growth is what anybody should aspire to grow through, which you can actually make leaps and bounds of progress at once, rather than taking a lot of time to make that similar progress in an organic manner. So this entire pyramid is what I call the what of the topic that we are discussing, because it's actually built on the curiosity as a base, and you
Mhm.
gradually grow up the pyramid, moving from curiosity to creativity, creativity to innovation, and innovation really leading to non-linear growth. And that's why I use this specific arrow to actually graduate from one level to another level.
Wow, that's a great example. Yeah, this workflow seems very nice to me. Like the framework you have put it in, at the base, we have this curiosity. It significantly reminds us how important it is to be curious in whatever we do.
Yeah,
Creativity is something that, be it art form or whatever, unless you are curious about something, you won't be creative at all. I would say that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So this is the what of the topic that I thought of sharing with you all today, and there's also the how of the topic, which means can people really be curious or not? I think there will be a lot of questions anybody who's listening to this particular podcast might be having, that can I be more curious? Am I curious enough to live this life in a way that there will be fundamentally a debate that are people are born curious, or can curiosity as a skill also be developed? And I would say there's nothing right or wrong in this, but to look at everything in terms of skills is a very pragmatic approach to really develop those skills. And of course there will be a lot of aspects of how a person is naturally curious. It could be based on their genes, or it could be based on their upbringing. But obviously we will not be discussing about uh, who is more curious as a 5-year-old child versus another 6-year-old child, right? So we are largely looking at adults, and at this particular stage what's important for us to really think of is, can I be more curious or not? This is the fundamental question that anybody who's listening to this podcast should be having in their mind, because that's how you can actually approach to develop those skills. So the how of it, again, I have a reverse pyramid, and the reverse pyramid looks something like this. It starts with survival. The reason why I say survival is because if anybody who is in a race, whether it's in a career or in life, if they are not surviving beyond a point, doesn't matter whether they are curious enough, whether they are enough curious or not, right? So
That's right.
the first and foremost thing, whether you are in a particular job or whether you want to grow in the particular career, what's important for anybody to look at is really about survival. But survival also means different things for different people, right? Because for me survival could mean that I have to make a certain level of bank balance, I have to meet certain level of needs, and that can vary from person to person. But here we are really talking about what are the basic essentials that are required for anybody to continue that particular race that they are into. Now, moving from survival to sustenance, it's really about how long you can survive. It's as simple as that. Survival is really about making ends meet at that particular time, but sustaining, because there could be various changes that might happen with time. And with
Right.
time, if you're able to still survive with time without downgrading your expectations, and that's really is about sustenance. After a point of being able to sustain and sail smoothly in any particular journey, what is really important is to actually also speeden your journey. And in that particular aspect, which is the third level, as you can see in the reverse pyramid, speedening is really about being more productive, being able to achieve things at a much faster pace, being able to achieve things in a short span of time without impacting the productivity and the quality of what you're generating, be it content, be it writing, be it at work, be it at any point of research that you're doing, or even if it matters, even in that sense, even if you are playing a sport, it's really about being able to achieve a lot of things in a short span of time. So speed is essentially very important, even in the non-linear growth, because only then you can actually do leapfrogging. Imagine for a country like India, with 130 40 crores of population to be able to achieve certain things. You can't take for the rest of your life to achieve things. Obviously it doesn't help, so you need to have that space. Only then you'll be able to achieve things. Now the last part, which is the most important part of how you can actually develop curiosity as a skill, is to really create that time and space for yourself. Because once you are able to productively achieve certain things, you'll be able to create more time for yourself. And in that time, you need to also have some sort of a mental space for yourself. So moving from surviving in your career to really sustaining it for a longer period and being able to achieve more things in a short span of time with a better speed, you can create some time and space. Because really innovative problems or innovative solutions do not happen on its own. You need to do certain basics, and for that to happen you need to be able to create that time and space for yourself. Unless and until you create the time and space for yourself, you can't really achieve what you want to achieve. So while you could be curious as an individual to some level, but if you want to take it to the next level, you need to really give yourself more time and more space. Because most of the times you will be asking questions that might not have answers, and some of the questions itself might be very silly and stupid at that point in time, because that
Right.
question itself might not lead you to an answer. Because the journey of figuring out an answer can actually help you unlock several doors eventually. So most of the times you could appear to be very unproductive to a different person, and that's how a lot of artists and creative people are also seen by others, right? They are seen as someone who is just lazing around. But what's happening inside to them is really that they are giving themselves space and time to be able to connect different dots that they have collected at different points in time. And with that they come up with original ideas, and with those original ideas they're able to tackle specific problems and coming up with innovative solutions. And that's how the real uh, all breakthroughs, be it scientific breakthroughs or technological breakthroughs or even cultural breakthroughs, really happen. So it's essential to be able to create the time and space. You need to have actually done all the three levels, which is to have survived. Because if you ever give up in the journey anytime, you will not be able to create that space for yourself. And if you can't sustain
Right.
it for a longer period, and if you can't speeden up the journey to be able to create that time, so essentially it's like if you have 0 to 1, 0 to 100 as a unit of the time that you have. If you have speeded up,
Mhm.
you can actually achieve several things. Even by if you can reach the point 50 or point 70, then you have the rest of the time available for yourself to kind of think openly and really come up with creative, unique, innovative solutions that can help you to really leapfrog. So so anybody who is listening to this particular podcast should be really aspiring to achieve all three levels, to be able to give themselves that time and space, so that they can actually build on their existing levels of curiosity and actually grow in the pyramid that is shown on the left side.
Right. That really makes a lot of sense. Thanks for bringing this up. Particularly when you said you need to have a time and space, I realized, yes, we'll be stuck at some point and we don't give ourselves the time and space we need to move to the next level. We need to generate the momentum ourselves so that we can carry forward with the journey.
Yeah.
That's really an interesting point. And as I see it from a different perspective, this all we can understand when we are adults, right? So let's say if I was a kid, then do you think our educational system is supporting uh, innovative culture and improving curiosity, or what are the measures do you see if there are any currently happening around, or how do we tweak it? It is a skill that should be nurtured from childhood, I believe, so that it can drive greater results.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. In fact, as children, um they are more curious than adults, because there's a concept called synapses in your brain. And I wanted to just
Right.
pull up something as we speak
Yeah,
to
please.
share something different and a bit more data oriented. So what happens? Okay, let me share my screen.
Yeah.
you see the screen?
Yeah, I have your screen, Swaroop. Yeah.
Okay. So, so as you can see on the screen, at birth, all human beings have about 100 billion neurons in their brain, and each neuron has about 2500 synapses. So essentially it's actually the space between the neurons is what called as synapses. By the age of thir- by the age of 2 to 3, you are able to add more number of synapses to your brain. And as you can see, uh, as you grow, on the right hand side of this particular image, you can see how those synapses are forming forming in any individual brain. So what when you ask this question about is the current education system developing children to be more curious? Maybe not always. And unfortunately, uh, it also depends on what sort of a curriculum that the children are going through, right? So
Right.
different education systems or different curriculums promote different approaches towards learning. So some curriculums are more open for people to naturally experience and explore solutions on their own. That then
Mm-hmm.
there are several curriculums which are more intended to force down upon a particular ways and means of learning. And a lot of people talk about the rote memorization, which has had a huge impact. I mean, there is a merit to that approach, but in today's world, which is driven largely by technology aided ways of working and technology aided ways of even remembering things, that might not be the most appropriate approach. But yeah, so giving people to actually figure out solutions for themselves, even as children, I think it's seen as a luxury in today's world. And that's exactly what the point I was talking about, creating the time and space.
That's
those
right.
those whom For those whom the survival and sustainability aspects are taken care of, and for those whom they are already at a higher level of lifestyle in terms of their finances and their education system and their environment around them, and they are able to actually create that time and space. And that's why you see a lot of people who are children of millionaires and billionaires actually
Mm-hmm.
can pursue things which are of pure interest to them rather than taking a traditional path. I remember listening to a big banker. I think it's Kotak, Uday Kotak. Maybe
Okay.
I'm wrong, but his children, one is into sports, another is into music. And then after spending 20-25 years in sports and music, they've actually joined back the business with absolutely no business background or no business education. And he was asked as to how does that fit into the overall ways of running the business itself. So he was explaining this thing that since they have had a unique exposure to life through sports and music, and since they played and performed at competitive level, they understand the level of competition that it takes to win and to work with people, to be resilient when they face failures. And that's essentially what can help them survive and actually sail through and actually grow in the business that they are going to be taking care of. So they were able to create that time and space for themselves to
Right.
be, to be able to creatively approach different problems, and hence they can potentially come up with innovative ideas which otherwise would not have been possible for someone who has traditional education background, who would not have afforded to get the time and space for themselves.
I agree 100% on it. Um, what they did is nothing sort of a miracle these days. It's a joy to see people follow their own path rather than being rubbed onto something.
Yeah. You see such examples on a day-to-day basis as well on LinkedIn. I know there are a lot of people who also give counter examples. For that matter, a few days back, I was reading to someone who wrote a post, and this person has a fantastic career working working at a big MNC and working at a big consulting company. But
Mm-hmm.
he also has the background of education from IIT and an IIM. So he wrote a post where he explained how he made different career choices. But the post was a counter example to what we are speaking right now. The counter example is because he was still referring to the topic of choosing careers based on what works rather than what one is passionate about. So the reason I'm bringing this example is that despite there is a proven reasons for people to follow non-traditional paths, it's not easy because there are more examples of people following traditional paths and succeeding than than the number of examples of people who have taken passion-led choices. So it will take time, and I'm sure a lot of people are mindful of the options that they have, and it's purely personal choice, right? But then
Right.
those who already are at a level who can take such risks, I think if more such people take such risks and follow careers based on their passion, there's a high likelihood that we can come up with more innovation. And the example that I was sharing about Ravi Venkatesan calling for uh, corporates and governments to really recognize people for their innovative ideas despite commercial success. I think it will eventually come to fruit. Only when we have more examples of people coming to the forefront with their non-traditional choices that they have made and all the unconventional career paths that they would have taken.
Yeah, I believe that's eventually inevitable because with the advent of AI, I think the traditional path wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
have your own spark. Yeah, you can't
Yeah,
go around
absolutely.
that
I think,
traditional.
yeah. So
Yes,
this generative AI itself is already is a kind of a tipping point in that sense. Now, how people are going to take that up is absolutely upon each of them. But whether you like it or not, whether you can handle it or not, you have to come to the party because it has actually disrupted already.
right. There is no going back. So traditional
Yeah,
parts has to the wheel has to turn again, and we will hope that the passion takes it over.
yeah, yeah.
So how you were talking about how we can develop curiosity as a person consciously. Like, can you help throw some light on it?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question and a very pertinent question for anybody listening to this podcast as well. A few days back, I was listening to a speaker, and he is a biology scientist. He's also a musician. He is also a quizzer. And when he
Wow.
introduced himself, the way he introduced was he's a musician, he's a biologist, he's a scientist, and he's a quizzer. And he said that I make money and I make a living out of all three, and it's not just one of them and then I'm feeding the other just for my curiosity. And he particularly said it because he wanted to emphasize the point that you can make a living out of anything if you are committed to curiously pursue your interest. And when he says he's a quizzer, he writes quiz questions to Kaun Banega Karodpati in several languages, and he
Wow.
also writes quiz questions to the Hindu magazine, which comes up on every Sunday. He is a musician, he plays guitar, and he is on different bands where he actually goes out and performs and he gets paid for that. And he has a full time job of being a scientist, trying to research on some sort of RNA, DNA sort of questions.
That's
And
very
I
interesting.
asked,
He's pursuing
yeah,
both the technical as well as creative pursuits. That
yeah,
that
that's
happens when we leave people pursue their own interests. Great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when we asked this question to him as to how people can develop curiosity, he shared very interesting anecdotes. One of the things that's still running in my mind is to really ask fundamentally different questions, no matter what, how that question is going to help you. You still ask such questions. For example, you're traveling on a particular road, and you suddenly see a red light. Why would you ask this question? We wouldn't generally ask these questions like, why is the red color only is being used to show that you should stop? Why not any other color? That's a
Right.
very fundamental question, right? But we take things for granted. A lot of things that we are experiencing on a day-to-day basis, we take it for granted. But really, curiosity can be nurtured when we recognize the fact that we have become someone who is taking things for granted. And once we acknowledge that, once we recognize that, you need to take a step back and say, why should I be taking it for granted? Why can't I just go and figure out and ask simple questions? And that can lead you to something else. And that's exactly the collection of dots is all about. You don't have to really look for how will this answer help me in my life at this point in time. In fact, there's a paper written in 1930s by someone called Abraham Flexner, and the title of the paper is called The Usefulness of the Useless Knowledge. The
Interesting.
fundamental underpinning message from that paper is that you need to really look at several aspects of our life without any ulterior motive as to what will I achieve when I do this particular activity. Many times you might not achieve anything if you pursue this path of curiosity, but that's okay. In fact, that's how you can develop many experiences. In fact, there's an interesting model called Federer versus Tiger Woods model. So it's actually a model that is used for making career choices. Many
Oh,
people might know Tiger Woods as a premier elite golfer, and a lot of people do not know that he has been playing golf for the entire life of his life. So
repeat Jemuni Pola. Start.
so yeah,
Uh,
so many people might know Tiger Woods as an elite golfer, but what a lot of people might not know that in his entire life he just pursued golf for nothing else. Whereas you might also think the same with Roger Federer, because that's how you have always known him and you have always seen him. But guess what? Roger Federer came to tennis many years later because he actually pursued different sports, and only after trying and exploring many sports he landed at tennis, which is something that many people do not know. And that also explains how Federer plays his game in a very unique manner. Many shots that he play as a tennis player are completely unconventional, which is what adds to the thrill of watching Federer. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong about choosing one sport or choosing one career path, but life is more interesting if you can actually allow yourself to pursue things that you're actually interested in. And that's how anybody can actually develop skills as a curious individual. And very interesting things actually are reminded to me when you ask this question, how do you develop this? So I actually followed a couple of people based on what I was reading. One was Leonardo da Vinci, the other is Richard Feynman. Interestingly, while they are separated by 400 years or so, both pursued several questions which are actually similar in nature. They both of them have observed the light of a candle for hours together. Both of them looked at birds and tried to understand the movements of birds. So it's so fascinating when you think about how people separated by several centuries can still pursue things out of curiosity and still come up with unique solutions to the context in which they were operating. So essentially, if you are someone who wants to develop curiosity in you, who wants to nurture curiosity in you, and who wants to be more skilled at being curious, so you need to really start asking some fundamental questions in your life. And you also must be reminding yourself that not all questions can lead you to answers that are helpful and implementable or useful in your current context, which is fine, because because you have enough examples from the history that people who have followed their passions, people who have followed their curiosity, eventually were able to connect the dots, which is the famous saying by Steve Jobs as well, right? Stay curious, stay foolish, and stay hungry, and you can only connect the dots in the future and not
by looking backwards.
by
Yes,
looking backwards. Yeah.
that's right. Oh, it's really an interesting conversation. When you bring up this Leonardo da Vinci, many people only know him as a painter. He's actually many more than that.
Yeah.
He invented a lot of things. He was into military. He even um, had a detailed diagrams of biology, anatomy, and how animal structures were there.
Yeah.
He it was even rumored that he invented the modern scissors, and
Oh,
he
interesting.
could use, yeah, he could use both of his hands, one for writing and one for drawing. So there is a common misconception that a specialist can be you cannot be a specialist when you are a generalist. I think he proved that wrong. He's a specialist in multiple domains.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
curiosity is the
absolutely.
main framework that allowed him to do so, I perceive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think all these luminaries, I'm sure there are many more people, but we just spoke about a couple of them. And any successful person is actually very curious at the core of his heart, because only when he or she is curious, they're able to actually go and figure out solutions for their problems and problems of others. And that's how they actually become highly successful.
That's right. Thanks for bringing this up, Swaroop. Really, thank you for your time. And I would like to end this by a question you have posed. Even when I was a kid, I used to wonder why the light has to be red for stop sign. Then I figured it out that it has the maximum wavelength, so it can be seen from a very far distance than any other color in the visible spectrum. So
Absolutely. You're right.
yeah, so then I realized that yeah, there is a reason behind everything. Everything is connected, right? As Sherlock says, cause
Yeah,
and effect.
that's right.
Thanks a
No,
lot for your time.
thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast, Krishna. And I've really enjoyed sharing what I have learned in my life so far. But I'm sure we will stay in touch, and we will keep connecting again.
Sure, it's an absolute pleasure. I will I will bother you to come back to this show
It'll be
more
my pleasure.
frequently.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Swaroop. See you again.
Thanks, Krishna. Take care. Bye.
Yeah. That's all for today, guys. Come up with something else on the next episode. So stay tuned and signing off, Krishna here.